Hi there, I'm Mr. Scott. Welcome to Economics. You're here because you want to learn about scarcity and choices. Let's get right into that today. So, first off, we'll start off with what is economics? Economics is the study of choices. It explains how people, businesses, and governments decide what to do with all of the limited resources that are out there. Because when everyone is around, they want to make more things than they possibly can. So, because resources like time, money, materials, all of these things are scarce, they're limited. Scarcity means that there's a limitation on resources. Economics, the study of our choices, helps us understand trade offs, what we decide to do, incentives, our motivation, and our consequences of our choices. And it's how billions of decisions every day around the world are made. So, throughout this lesson, we'll talk about how there's unlimited wants. We all want lots of stuff, right? So does society. We're going to talk about how those things interact with one another to help us produce choices and outcomes. As a quick note for any economics class, always remember this is not financial advice, it's not legal advice. Talk to parents, make good decisions, and don't break any laws. So, this lesson, we're going to define and explain economics as a subject. We're going to define scarcity and explain unlimited wants versus limited resources. We'll look at recognizing trade offs in everyday decisions. We will identify the concept called opportunity cost in real life choices. And you will learn your first economic model called the PPF, or Production Possibilities Frontier. It's one of my favorites. Keep in mind, every choice has a cost. Even if you can't quite see it on the surface, it doesn't have to be a price, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So, if you haven't written this down, you should write this down. Scarcity is the most important concept in economics, the study of choices. And it's because of scarcity, which means not having enough of something, that we have to make decisions. So, because resources are limited in economics, keep in mind, resources are limited, therefore, and wants are unlimited. Therefore, we have to make decisions. Like if we could just do anything we wanted at any point in time with no consequences, we wouldn't have to think about it. But that's not the way the world works. So time, money, labor, materials, all of these things are limited. And so scarcity, the concept that we want to use them for lots of different things, it means we have to make decisions. And if you're feeling like, wait a second, it's complicated, is this getting confusing? All it is there's a lot of things we all want to do. We got to make decisions with the resources that we have. And scarcity is at the root of all economic problems. So just think about these ideas. Would we still need money or prices if scarcity didn't exist? Would choices matter if everything was free? What would motivate people to do things? And what happens when demand gets more than supply, when people want to buy more things than actually exist? Like, would people actually make them? So these ideas of scarcity they're actually baked into our world, and you see them. Maybe you haven't been able to identify them yet. So let's start by learning how to identify things that impact us and our choices by diving into needs versus wants. This is one of the underlying concepts connected to scarcity. So in our lives, we have things that are needs. These are things that are required for survival. This is not supposed to be overly complicated. Food, water, shelter. It's the basics. We all need those things. Wants are everything that makes life a little bit more fun. Streaming, phones, eating out, a nicer car, all the stuff that you want to do in life that is optional, but really kind of nice to have. Those are the things that people tend to like to spend money on or like to consume. And so we have to make decisions about what we're going to do with respect to those things. Keep in mind, needs are essentials, wants are optional. Now, because we can't have everything, this is the concept of trade offs. This is another key economic idea. Because we can't have everything, we must give up something. So we're faced with a whole bunch of different things. That's the idea of trade offs. There's decisions that have to be made. Do I go and buy something on Amazon, or do I save my money for the future? Do I go have some sushi, or do I go have some pizza? Do I play some video games? Do I go hang out with my friends? Like, there's just lots of choices out there, lots of options. And the fact that we have to give up one to do another, that's the concept of a trade-off. So these things will pop up in your life, and they're all over the place. And they're probably things that you can identify once you sit down and go, oh yeah, I have to routinely just look at all of the opportunities in front of me, and then I have to make some decisions. We make decisions specifically by a concept called opportunity cost, and it is what you specifically give up when you make a decision. So think about this. Let's say you're hungry and you want to go to the store, or you want to go out to lunch with your friends, and you're like, well, we could go have pizza, we could go have cheeseburgers, or we could go have sushi. And everyone's kind of like, nah, we don't want cheeseburgers. So it's down to pizza or sushi. Like, you're going to do one of those two things. So if you decide to go have pizza and the other option was sushi, that's the next best alternative that you lose out on when you decide to go have pizza. That is called the opportunity cost of you having pizza. It's the thing you gave up. And whether you're rich, you're poor, no matter where you live, opportunity cost and identifying opportunity cost is a foundational skill in economic thinking because it teaches us to value our choices appropriately, especially as we start looking at allocating resources. If you ever start thinking about the concepts of investing in the future, so spending money now versus saving it to potentially invest later, those types of thinking skills are related to the idea of opportunity cost or sacrificing an opportunity. It's those things that you gave up when you make a decision. Now, in economics, we get to three economic questions. And those three economic questions, in the process of making all these choices, we start to look at these things. What should be produced? How should it be produced? And for whom should it be produced? Like, who's going to get all the stuff? And these different questions are answered through societal economic systems, which we'll cover in a different session. But they're answered in different ways through different systems and societies. But they have to be answered. Like, they can't go unanswered because otherwise nobody would do anything and everyone would just not get the stuff that they want. And that's pretty frustrating. So when we start making choices, think about how it applies in your life. Think about who's getting what, how much we're producing, who's going to make stuff. So think about, for you, a specific example to you. Maybe you have $10 and you could go to lunch or a movie. Okay, this could be a personal decision. A company might have to decide between building a new factory or hiring more workers. So that's kind of a bigger level decision that affects more people. A government might have to decide between spending money on their military, defense spending, or educational programs. Each choice, each decision reveals priorities, and those types of priorities are economic decision-making skills in action. And because they affect you, this is not just some abstract concept or some abstract theoretical idea, even though the ideas we talk about in this class are very theoretical, because we can apply them to lots of different scenarios. And keep in mind, sometimes the real world does vary a little bit. So as we're making decisions, we see that society has all of these resources, and we want to learn how to label those resources so we can speak about them in an educated way and also learn how to analyze them. The basic resources are called factors of production, and they're used to make all goods and services in society. A good is a physical product that you can typically consume, or I guess it could be a digital product like a PDF file or video game. And a service is something that somebody does for someone else. So a good is something you buy to have, and a service is something that someone does for you. These resources, the factors, go into all of the things that are made, and they're typically put into four categories: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So land is anything that is classified as a natural resource. Labor is human work and effort. Capital is machine or money that is used to buy machines, or considered wealth that can move through different types of investments to buy big types of pieces of infrastructure or equipment. And entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is the creative process that goes into taking risks in a business space. All of those things are combined to make different types of products. So let's look at pizza, for example. Pizza, the land consists of wheat, tomatoes, and cheese. The natural resources, labor of the cooks and the drivers, the people who do the work to actually just get the pizza to where it needs to be. And the capital is the ovens and the tools, the machines that go into making the pizza. And the entrepreneurship factor is the owner who takes the risk to open the shop and buy the factors and hopefully sell the pizza, because they may not sell the pizza, but they still have to pay the cooks. They still have to pay for the tomatoes and all that good stuff. So the entrepreneur takes the risk and puts the idea together, and thus they are the fourth factor of production. So once we know that resources exist, economists build models to understand how those resources are used. And these models simplify reality so we can try to predict behavior and outcomes. But keep in mind, these are models. This doesn't mean that they're always going to work perfectly, but they give us a good idea and tool about how society actually works, about how choices actually work. So we can try to take these abstract ideas and apply them to different scenarios that we might observe in the news media, on streaming services, or however we get our information about the world. So what is economic modeling? An economic model is a simplified picture of how people make decisions. It starts with an assumption called homo economicus. Yes, I know. And the idea, what that means is economic man. And there's an assumption that man is perfectly rational, man meaning humankind. Perfectly rational and makes decisions always in their best interest to maximize the enjoyment or profitability of their resources. Now, that's not how the real world works. But we have to start somewhere with understanding how we can model and analyze behavior, history, and events so we can learn more about decisions and how they're made. So humans aren't perfect. However, these models, as a anecdotal as an anecdotal data point in terms of my estimation, being involved in economics, teaching economics for 15 years and being involved in business for the last almost decade, they're applicable probably about 90% of the time. There will always be exceptions. So it's a good place to start. And we can test how these rational choices, self-maximizing in terms of benefit choices, are made in places like markets. So economists, people who think about economics, can predict trends, measure outcomes, and try to hopefully improve decision making or government policy without needing to observe every single interaction in society. Although with AI out there, it's getting pretty interesting about how much data can be collected by computers at one point. So economists use visual models as an extension of economic assumptions and modeling to try to take a look at visual representations of data. So we can simplify a lot of the things that we talk about. Yes, this seems a little abstract. Don't worry. You're going to learn your first model here in just a little bit. So we can see as we start to put these different assumptions about behavior, different assumptions about many different concepts that you'll see as we learn, as we dig further into economics, we will start to layer these ideas on top of each other, and they're going to interact in ways that it's hard to keep in your head. So having a visual model is something that can be useful as we begin to analyze tools. And what models do is they try to focus on the core logic, the way that reasonable decisions and thus outcomes happen from those decisions. So we can say, well, that seems to make sense and would apply in most cases. So let's learn about our first model. The production possibilities frontier is the first thing we're going to look at because it's a simple, doesn't mean it's easy, but a simple model to learn as it looks at all the resources in a society, like a country or even the world. And it looks at how they can be allocated or used. And then, so every time we use land, labor, capital for one purpose, we can't use it for something else. Like this is logic. Like it's the non-exclusion principle. Like you can't be one place and another place at the exact same time. So if you're going to be farming, you can't be fishing. Like you can't go physically farm and then also physically fish at the same time. So the PPF shows that trade-off. Like if we're going to put workers one place, we can't put them somewhere else. I love to play economic style video games when I was a kid where you allocate resources and like build empires and all kinds of cool stuff like that. This is an example of that in action. So if you like those kind of video games, that might be applicable. So the PPF shows this trade-off visually, and it is a way for us to analyze concepts of scarcity, efficiency, using our resources to the maximum level of benefit, and making sure nothing's sitting idle, and also to show how opportunity cost works all in one nice, tidy little visual. So we're going to make some assumptions first so that we can learn how to apply them to our model. And I know you're right now saying, why can't we just look at the model? Don't worry, we'll get there. So we're going to assume that this country can produce crabs by fishing or trapping the crabs. And they can also produce pineapples by planting or harvesting. So somebody in this society can either work on fishing or they can work on farming. Like they can't do both. So society, a person's going to allocate their time doing one or the other. They can't do both at the same time. So society, or we in this case, have to make a choice. Let's take a look at how our society in this abstract scenario could allocate its resources and make things happen. So here we go. On the y-axis, we have the amount of crabs that we have or could possibly obtain. On the x-axis, we have pineapples. And what this looks at is if we take a look at, okay, we put all of our resources, let's say everyone go farm for pineapples. We would say, okay, well, obviously we will have 0 crabs. So how many pineapples do we have? 50. Okay, sounds good. Now we're going to switch it. Everybody do crabs, nobody do pineapples. So, okay, everybody's crabs. So 21 crabs, 0 pineapples. Those are the two extremes of our production possibilities frontier. Now, in this hypothetical example, I've just created data points to show you how this could work. So let's say we got 21 crabs, but we then allocate some people to go grow some pineapples. So we slide some people over to make some pineapples. We're like, all right, we'll make 10 pineapples, but hey, we still can make 20 crabs. Well, that's pretty good. Then we say, all right, well, we want more, so we want to allocate and get at least 20 pineapples. Well, that makes sense that we would get fewer crabs. So now we're down to 18 crabs, and then so on. So down here, 30 crabs, down we drop down, or 30 pineapples, we drop to 14 crabs because we're moving resources around this economy, around this society. The concept is if everybody's working and everybody's doing something, all the resources are being used, we can achieve a combination on the production possibilities frontier. It means, hey, everything's being used and we're getting the most out of our society in terms of goods and services. And that means rational human beings are happy about that. Is that always how the real world works? Of course not. It's nice to have some time off. Like, I get it. But economics looks at this and says, all right, everything's being used. We're getting the most stuff possible from this society. If we had a combination here, like let's say, let me clear this up. Let's say we had a combination of 10 pineapples and 10 crabs inside here. We could do it. Yeah, that's fine. But maybe some people are not working, and that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means there's not going to be crabs or pineapples produced. And because notice this is the frontier, we are inside the frontier. We thus have an inefficient use of our productivity resources. It means we're not getting as much stuff as we could if we made a different choice. Is that good or bad? That's up for you to decide, but it does mean we're not getting enough stuff out of those choices. Let's say someone said, hey, I want to have 40 pineapples and I want to have, at the same time, I want to have 21 crabs or 20 crabs. Well, that would be this point right here. We cannot attain that because that is outside the frontier. Maybe we have some type of new technology in the future that allows us to get to that level where we could push the frontier outward. I know it's not really a symmetrical curve, but I'm doing my best with my mouse. And we could push the frontier outward through obtaining different resources or technologies. But at this current point, we cannot obtain point C. So to summarize, each point is a trade-off of different resource use. Inside the curve is wasted potential for an economy, and then outside is impossible for an economy to achieve unless the curve shifts and growth in the economy or in the resources or in the technology, the productivity technology, can move the curve outward. Here we go. Let's curve it. Boom. There we go. That's a little bit better. So those are the fundamental ideas of the PPF. In conclusion, scarcity forces choices. Opportunity cost helps us choose wisely. In economics, the key is it's about one thing: how to make the most of what we have, how to make smart choices based on the fact that we have scarcity. I'm Mr. Scott. Thanks for being here. Stick around. I'll see you next time.